lecture number 12. Lecture number 12 is about the exception handling, file handling, and then we will continue the GUI programming. That's what we are doing right now. So exception handling. So if you remember, when we have some values and we ask the user to give us some values, console.read line, and then that particular specific value comes as a string in that particular specific, when the read line, that will give us back as a string whatever the user has entered. And if we are asking the user to give us a value which is a number, and user has given us some random string which is not actually a number, then when we try to convert it, we see a runtime error or runtime exception. Okay? So the exception handling is to handle such kind of a situation where the user is not going according to the rules which we have set. And then we have to handle those exceptional situations and how your program is going to respond. Till now, what our program do, it crash right in the middle of the execution, it crash, stop, and it show me something like this. But this is something for the programmer who can understand, okay, yeah, there is some runtime error and this is a specific exception at that specific line occur. But for the user, for the normal user, if you are developing a software for a company or maybe for some client, doing some sales software for that particular specific client, and then salespersons are handling that software inside the shop, that kind of information is nothing to them. They can't do they have to restart the system. Once they restart the system, then they can follow the rules which you have set from them, and then they will be able to continue to use that particular specific software. But this is not a general norm for the softwares to have. So we need to handle these kind of situations. So how we can handle? The answer is exception handling. For that we have try. Well, now we need to anticipate what are the possibility, and I have been telling you in the from the very beginning, if the user is giving some random string instead of the number, that will generate a runtime error. So we know that situation may arise. So when we are developing the software, we need to find out that specific portion of the code which actually may generate. It is not necessarily that it must generate, but it may generate these kind of exceptions or the runtime errors. So we put that particular specific block into the try. Try mean we are trying to perform the operation that we want to do, or this program need to be done. For example, converting that input string into the number. So we are trying to do that, and if we fail, it means there's a runtime exception. And because we have put that particular specific block inside the try, now we have we can tell our program how to handle such situation, how to come out of that runtime exception. Instead of crashing your program, stopping your program right in the middle of the execution, follow a specific path, give an appropriate message to the user, and continue to do the thing that that software need to do, rather than stop, and there is no other way to restart the program. Okay? So I will show you the simple example. Again, I just go back to that particular specific console programming. Okay? So I just try to so I just delete that line, and I did what you can say that I put some variables, val1, val2, and then I say that console dot write, and then we are asking the user to enter a number. enter number 1, and then here we are saying that the val 1 is equal to convert dot to int32, and then here we are saying that we are getting the value from the standard input read line, and that read line is going to return us a string, and then we are trying to convert that string into the integer value, not like this. And I just copy paste these 2 lines. I just try to, okay, now we are in the Windows environment. My normal Mac shortcut keys are not going to work here. So we have number 2, again we are trying to do that thing. So we have get those 2 values, and now if I just run that particular specific program, and if I try to give something which is not a number, it will generate a runtime exception. Okay, come on. So it is asking me the number, I say AB, and look at that. It tell me that at the line number 8 there is an exception, and it also telling me the exact name, system.format exception. So that is a format exception that is occurring. So what we can do, I mean, now we can't do anything except to stop that particular program and to start again, and then again give the proper values, and then it will be okay, but not unless and until we restart the program. So what I'm going to do, I say try, and then this particular specific code which actually generate that specific what you can say that error I'm putting over here, and if you see that it is giving me an error, a red line underline under that particular once that try block is finishing, it expect a catch or finally. Catch mean that if in this particular specific code of block from the line number 8 to 11, if the runtime exception or the system exception occur, then what this program need to do? We need to tell that particular specific thing inside the catch block. We are catching that exception, and that will stop our program to crash. So we can say that we have a catch block, and what we want to catch, okay? So we want to catch something, and if you remember, we have a system format exception. So we can say that format exception, it is FE, this is a name of the variable, or this is a identifier, so you can choose whatever, format exception, whatever you want, but this one, that is a class which has been defined in the systems library, and in the systems it say that we have the format exception class, just like a string is a class which has already been defined in the system, and we also use the for the GUI programming button, list boxes, these are the classes which has already been defined. So format exception is a class which has already been defined in the C# library. We are telling that this kind of exception may occur in this particular specific code, and if that happen, then our program control will jump into this particular specific catch block, and whatever we want to do here, we can do start a new program, we can do anything that you can do in your journal program, you can write that coding here. It can contain 1000 lines, it can contain nothing, only one print statement, that's fine. Right now, for example, I am not doing anything, but what will happen? So, I come down here, run that particular specific program, finger cross it runs successfully. Huh? Yeah, it is trying to run it. So, it means that there is no syntax error, there is no problem here. Now, it is asking me. Again, I say A, B and press enter. Program stop, but without crashing. It did not crash. It did not stop right in the middle of the execution until there is some exception at that particular specific line. It completed successfully or not, but it completed. It executed normally. Now, we need to understand one thing, that what happened here. So, I just try to, yeah. Our program start executing the main program, execute the first line, initialize, or what you can say that declared two variables val1, val2. Then it go into the line number 7, that's a try catch block, and then it print that one number, okay, and then it get that value from here at this point. It get the value from the user and give as an input to this particular specific method which has been defined in the convert class. And at this line, that particular specific exception occur. Now, we have not executed this part of the code, did we? I just go back to that particular specific, not, I just go back to my, so look, it does not, that program, the execution, it does not print enter number 2, did it? No. So, at the line, that is a line number 9, the exception occur. Once the exception occur, it stop that particular execution of the code which is inside the try block. It means the remaining line which exist in the catch block, they are not going to be executed. Do you understand my point? On the line number 9, when the exception occur, it will stop the execution of the try block because now exception has occurred. So, it will jump from line number 9 to the line number 13, because there we are telling that we are going to handle an exception which is a format exception, and that is exactly the same exception that has occurred. And then we are not doing anything here, that is why it just continue, finish the program, done. Making sense? So, I just press and program has stopped. Okay. So, I can also say that instead of stopping it, I say I want to give a proper message to the user. So, I say that console.write line, and then I say that format exception. I can print the format exception. So, whenever you are trying to print, look, this is an object of a class, and that some of you may have seen, okay, because whenever you are trying to print object, what it will do, in the object class we have a toString method which can try to convert that object into the string format, and that has a default implementation. So, it will try to convert that particular specific format exception into the using the toString method which has already been defined in that class and appropriately. So, it will just use that method. We are printing the object, but it will automatically use that toString method to convert that into the string, whether it is going to use the object one or it has implemented the toString method inside the format class. I think that they have already implemented that method to give you appropriate message. So, I will just try to run it again. And again I give AB, and look at that, it is giving me a long message. It says that system.format exception input string was not in the correct format, and then it is also telling me the stack that number dot throw some error parse int So it is telling me that in where that particular problem has occurred, and that is especially for being the programmers we need to understand. So it say that especially this one system.convert dot to int string value, and then the program dot main dot string. So it is telling that it happened in the program main method. Then it happened inside the convert dot to string, and then convert dot to string actually is asking the parse int 32 method, and then it is throw that particular specific exception. So we can find out the exact point or exact method where that particular specific exception is happening. Okay, so that is a one thing. The other thing, we also have a lot of other type of exceptions. Here it is a specific format exception, but if I change that particular specific thing, for example, I say null reference exception. I have a catch block, but for the null reference exception, not for the format exception. Do you understand my point? What exception is occurring in the code? That is a specific type, that is a format exception. But what I am catching, that is a null reference exception. And if I try to do that, A, B, and press enter, exception is occurring. Why? It is in the try catch block. We are catching a specific exception, but still our program is crashing. So you need to understand one thing. There are many types of exception, but you need to catch in the catch block that specific exception that is actually occurring in the code. If it is not, it will generate the runtime exception and it will crash your program. Number one thing. Is it clear? So you need to be careful that once the exception, which exception is occurring. So you need to provide that particular specific exception. One more thing that I would like to share here. So I just go back, stop that particular specific program here, and then Control Z. I control the format exception. Now, for example, if I just try to do one more thing here, that console dot write line, and then I say that not division, this is division of numbers, I val 1 divided by val 2. Remember that whenever we are dividing some number with 0, it generates a runtime exception or runtime error. Remember that? Now I just leave it there, and then I try to run the program. This time we will try to give the proper number, so it does not actually generate me the format exception, but the second number we will give some 0. The second number is 0, and now again the program is crashing. Why? Now it says that system dot divide by 0 exception has occurred. Divide by 0 exception has occurred, and we are not catching that exception. So it means that it is a possibility that the code that we are trying, it may have the multiple exceptions. If that code can have multiple exceptions, it means we can have multiple catch blocks as well, so that we can catch each and every exception that may be occurring in our program. So I stop the program and then put another catch statement here, and then this time I say divide by 0 exception. So division div exception or div 0 exception, whatever. This is the identifier, so you can select whatever you name you want. So again, I just try to print that particular specific rather than printing the whole what you can say that complete only the object. I say we have a dot message, not format. It should be div indent message. So we have a specific message which, and that will shorten that particular specific details. It will does not show me the stack, but it will show me the appropriate message. (34) and then give 0, and now look at that program terminated normally without any runtime exception or without crashing the execution of the program. It show me a message, attempt to division by 0. Only a message. It does not show me the name of the exception. It does not show me the stack where that particular specific exception is occurring, but it show me as some specific message which is related to that exception. So we have, and then again I just press key to stop that particular specific program. So this is a one way. It is a possibility that your program can have multiple exceptions that may occur in your code. You can put that specific code into the try block, and then you can have multiple catch statements. Now, if you want to handle each and every exception customizedly, I'm just printing the message. Yes or no? I mean right now. It is a possibility that if that particular specific exception occurs, for example, you are trying to open a file and that file does not exist in the directory structure, and that will generate a file not found exception. So you want to do that particular specific thing in a different way. So if you want to customize the handling of each and every exception differently, then you can have the multiple catch blocks. That's fine. That's what we are doing right now here. Each exception is handled in a different way. Reason is that because we are in a specific circumstances, specific problem occur, and then based on that, we are trying to perform a different operation based on the type of the exception that has occurred. If it is not the case, for example, here we are just printing one message, we can simply say that here, instead of giving the exact name of the exception, we say we are handling the exception. And I just changed that name to EXP. It is an exception which, and then we can simply, not this one, not my, remove that particular specific thing. Exception is again a class, but that is the class or parent of all the exceptions which has been defined in the C# class. Now there is a advanced programming concept that's called inheritance. We have a parent class, we have a child class. Here we talk only about the class. In the class we have some fields, some properties, some methods, some event handlers, and so on. We don't talk about the relationship between the classes because this is an advanced topic. So right now we're just trying to understand how to program. But the one thing is, just like, for example, you have your parents, you are the children of your parents, and some letter came on your name. You are not at home. Your parent can receive it? If it is not that much, confidential or something, that the privacy laws occur, but normally it say that yes, the parents can have it. Or we can say that if something is belong to the parent, you can inherit. If some property, some money they have, and unfortunately they have died, and you are going to inherit that particular specific, what belongs to your parent, it will eventually belongs to you. I don't know the exact laws of the New Zealand, what they are, but in my religion, that's divided among the children. But anyway, that pretty norm that it should be for the New Zealand as well. Okay. So parents have something, then the children can receive it. Now we are saying that a children occur, a message, an exception for the children has occurred that can be received by the parent. You can say that a letter is coming on your name, parent can receive it in a simplest form. A message is coming for the child, which is a format exception or divide by zero exception. So that message can be received by or can be catched by the exception, which is the parent of all the exception classes. Understand? So now whichever exception occur, that exception can catch it and show the message. Run it 2 times so that you can see that it is actually going to if I just give the format exception, again look at that. It is telling me that the input string, I think that I should, okay, next time I will make it the message. So it show only the message rather than all the details of that particular specific exception. Okay. So it received that particular specification and our program is terminating in a normal fashion. And then here I say that dot message, and then now I will just try to generate that divide by zero exception. Did I push the play button? No. So again, it is will try to ask me these questions. I say 14 divided by 0, and now again program is doing its finishing its execution normally, but it will give me the attempt to divide by 0. So because exception is the parent of all the exception classes, it can receive the message for any kind of exception. If this is what you want, you don't want to customize based on the type of the exception that may occur in your program, and then you don't want to customize, then you can write this particular simple code, one catch exception, everything will be received, doesn't matter. But last time when we see that we have the format exception and then division by zero exception occur, it actually generates the exception. So if you are specifying each and every exception, then you have to have multiple catch blocks. So one thing that we have learned, number one thing, that we can use the try catch statements or try catch blocks to avoid the runtime exceptions and stopping our program from the execution. The code which may generate the runtime exception, we put that code inside the try block, and once the exception has occurred, for example, if the exception has occurred at the line number 9, that particular specific try catch block will finish. It means the line number 10, 11 and 12 which are inside the try block, they are not going to be executed. We need to understand that particular specific thing. If we want that this particular, for example, we have given the first value and then there is a error occur, so but the second value is not going to be asked and not going to be received. If you don't want it, then you can put that into another try catch block after this one, like this. Instead I say try, not try, I put these particular specific lines into this one, Control V, no, Control X, Control V, yeah, and then here we can have another catch block. I will just try to copy paste this one from here. So if you want that the lines after those first input value, the second input should be asked to the user, then you have to put it into a different try catch block. So we need to understand the flow of what is happening. If some error at any line within the try block exists or it occurs, it will stop the execution of try block. Whatever the remaining lines within the try block, they are not going to be executed, and it will directly go into the catch block which actually handling that exception. If you are giving the specific format exception or the division by zero exception, then it will go to the appropriate catch block based on the exception type which is occurring. If it is only you are using the exception only, then definitely all the exceptions, they are going to one block. First of all, try and catch blocks will help us to avoid the runtime exceptions and the termination of your program abnormally. Number two thing that we understand here, that at the line in the try block, at the line where the exception has occurred, the remaining lines will not be executed and it will directly go into the catch block. We can have multiple catch block so that we can customize the response of our software based on the type of the exception that is occurring. And if you don't want it, you can put that only one exception catch block with the exception only, and that is the parent of all the exceptions. So it can catch all different type of exception, whatever is occurring. We can have multiple catch blocks, we can have single catch block, and we also have a try. And then we also have one more thing before we can jump to the slides. So we also have a finally. Okay. So finally is also a block, try, catch, and finally. Finally mean that we try something, if there is some exception occurred, okay, it will be going to the catch block, but after that finally will always execute, whether there is an exception or whether there is no exception. For example, if I just try to print rather than, okay, let me control Z, these things, go back to our, yeah, so we have these two input values and the division. So I say finally, and here I just print one simple message, right line, we are in finally block. Okay. So I just try to run that particular program 2 times, and then we will jump back to our slides so that we can finish our lecture. So we have 14 divided by Z, or maybe I say AB, okay, and then look at that. It show me the exception, it go into the exception part, format exception, it should tell me the input string was not in a correct format, and then it is say that we are in finally block. It means exception occurred, go to the catch, which is appropriate catch block if we have multiple one, do whatever there is there in that catch block, and then execute the finally block. Understand? Try, exception occur, go to the appropriate catch block, whichever handling that particular specific exception, execute that specific code, and then come to the finally block and execute that code as well. Exception occurred, go to the catch, then finally also execute it. Now I just try to run that program once more. And now we are going to give the appropriate numbers, not 0, no exception occur, it execute the try block, there is no exception occur, and then it will execute the finally block always. So always finally block is going to be executed all the time. 14 divided by 2, answer is 7, division of number is 7. So that is try block has been executed without any exception, but finally is still executing. So finally is something which is going to be executed all the time, and this is normally which we require. For example, we are trying to read some information from a file. That is the part of our today's lecture as well. So we are trying to read some information from the files. We have opened that file. Open means that we have make a connection between our program and the file actually, and then we are reading something. And during that execution, during that particular specific processing of the information within the file, some exception occur. If the exception occur, what will happen? Your program is going to terminate if you have not handled that exception, and if you handle that exception, okay, that's fine. So finally is we need to close that connection which exists between your program and the file as well. The connection that need to be closed. So we can put that one in the finally block. Why? Because whether we are processing, if we are successful in the processing, still we need to close that connection. If there is an exception occur, we still need to close that exception. So we can say that put that one, that specific code of closing the connection between the program and the file, put that in finally. So whatever happen, if we are successfully process the information, we are going to close the file. If we are not successfully process the application, the exception occur, still we are going to close that connection. Same things for the databases, because when we are making a connection between the databases, between the program and the database, we are reading some information, we are updating and deleting the data. So we always need to close that collection. So that connection, so we need to put that, we can put that into the so let's come back to our lecture again. So we can put our code which may generate a runtime exception into the try, and then we can put some exceptions over there. So this is will give me a message and it will stop. Again, I explain you that we can have multiple catch block. The reason is that it is a possibility that one specific code can have the multiple may occur multiple exceptions, so we can have multiple exceptions as well. Because if we don't have that particular exception, which is the division by 0, and add that line number 12, it is going to actually stop your program, because you are not handling that, you are not catching that exception, you are not processing that exception, and still it occurs in your code, and it will going to. So that is exception handling. So an exception is any error condition or unexpected behavior that is encountered during the execution of the program, not when you are designing it, when you are, but as I told you, we can imagine, because when we are designing the user interaction, so you can't control the actions of the users, you can control how your program is going to react in those situations. Okay. So you can't force the user, you need to provide me a number, 1, 2, 3. Or maybe sometime, mistakenly he added some alphabet over there. So, but your program can handle that situation, then it's better. So exceptions can be raised due to the many reasons. Some of them are as follows. For example, the fault in your code, unavailable operating system resources, you are trying to open some resource and which does not exist over there, unexpected conditions. Exceptions have the ability to transfer the flow of program from one part to another. We are going into the try block. If there is an exception occur, it will jump to the catch block, and then it will go to the finally block, if that is a finally block is there. Finally block is what you can say that is optional. It not necessarily be there, and we have seen that without the finally block, our try catch is working. So as I told you, the exception is the parent of all the classes. So we have the exception, we have application exceptions which are due to some programming problems, and there are some system exceptions, division by 0, file not found, format exception is something which is the application exception. Okay. So these are some, what you can say that the hierarchy of the classes. Object is the parent of all the classes which are present in the C#. Same is true for the Java as well. So it doesn't matter that you don't know the Java language. Same is true. Object class, one class, very simple, very basic, which is the parent of all the classes which are. Even you are generating yet that program class. By default, automatically it is also the parent child of the object. Okay. So then we have exception, then we have a system exceptions, and then we have different type of exceptions which occur here. These are some common exceptions that occur. We have the exception that is the parent of all the exception, then we have the system exception, then we have the file not found exception, then we have the file out of index out of range exception, when we try to access some index value which does not exist actually inside your array, then it also give you the exception, okay? Because you are trying to access a memory area which you are not allowed to. Understand? So that is a system exception. And then null reference exceptions, all these type of exceptions can occur, okay? So there are a few examples here. For example, you are trying to read some specific file, and then file not found exception. You are trying to open a connection file which does not exist in that specific location where you are looking for. It will generate that particular specific exception. So we need to make sure that a text file, if you are trying to open it, I mean, now there are different way to open the file. If does not exist, create it. There is also possibility. So then, of course, in that specific scenario, you are not going to, that particular exception is not going to be raised. But if you are trying to say that I want to open a file only a read-only mode, it means file need to be existed before you can open it, okay? So directory not found, you are trying to open a directory which does not exist. Again, there are different modes. If does not exist, create it. Normally, when you are saving your projects, you can write everything in that particular specific address bar, and if that folder does not exist, it will automatically created by the system or by the IDE or the Visual Studio with that name, rather than it telling you, oh, that directory does not exist. Okay, no problem. I can create it and put your project inside that one. So we need to make sure the directory, if we are trying to open a specific directory, it should be existed before it. We can try to open it. Again, depending on which modes of opening you are trying to use. Index out of range, again, if I look at that, it is say that we have that particular specific colors index, and then we starting with 1, and then we say I is less than equal to colors. So when say I is less than equal to 0, it says 0, 1, 2, 3. It should have stopped at 3, but actually it is going at 4. Because we are saying that less than or equal to the colors.length. Colors.length is 4. So it become I value become 4, and 4 index value does not exist here. And now we are trying to access something which does not exist. It means actually, as I told you, that we have two specific what you can say that like object 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are exist consecutively in the memory. And now your program is access this memory area, this memory area, this memory area, this one, and then it is going here, which is not allowed by the operating system, because you have reserved this particular memory area. Now you are trying to access which is memory area which is not reserved for your program, and you are trying to access it because you go to the next level, next memory area when you go for the next index. Understand? So again, not allowed, and the index out of range exception occur. When we try to access an element whose index value is greater than or even -1 index value, it is not going to allow you to access that one. Null reference. So actually we are saying that here that this particular specific, where is that one? Yeah, so we are trying to I. So we say string I is equal to null, that is a null value, and then we are saying that I index value 2. I is null, and on that we are saying that index value 2. So of course it is not going to allow that particular specific thing on a null reference. We have a, for example, string dot trim, okay, and then we declare a string as a null and then say dot trim. Of course it is not going to allow it because that particular specific object does not exist. It is actually a null reference. Null reference, again here we are saying that null, text is null, and then say text dot trim. We are trying to access the method on the null value. It does not, it is not an object or instance of a class, so it does not allow. Argument null, so we are defining that particular specific string array as a null, and then we pass that particular specific thing as a input to the join method, because null argument is coming. Again, that is an exception which can occur. Invalid operation, we are trying to perform a specific operation which is not allowed at that specific situation. For example, here we're talking about for each. we say value in the list. So this is our list. Now the value first time will become 10, next time will become 20, third time will become 30. Now we are saying that inside this for each loop, we are saying that list dot remove. Now we are not allowed to do that. The reason is that we are iterating. We are going one by one in the over the elements of that list. So we are not allowed to change that list. Invalid operations. Yes, we can. I mean, it is not possible that this is a very valid operation, but under these circumstances, it is not allowed. Okay. So exception handling, try, catch. Finally, we have seen it. There is also a throw. Okay, and we will say try, put that particular specific block which may generate an exception in the try block, and then we can have a catch block which can catch that particular specific exception and perform or response to that particular specific situation. Okay, we are actually showing a message, just like we are printing on the console. Here we are putting a message in the visual paradigm. We can have the catch block, okay, catch block with the specific name of the exception. Okay, and then we also have the different file not found exception. So we can have multiple catch exceptions based on the how many exceptions can occur in the program or in the code. Multiple catch. There is no restriction. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can continue as many exceptions, catch blocks you want. But there will be only one try. Okay. Multiple catch. Yeah, we have seen it. Throw. Throw is something that it's if you look at that, this particular throw new exception. Throw new exception. So actually we are telling that we are going to throw new division by 0 exception. New means we are creating the object of that class, and we are throwing mean that this is the exception that is going to occur. So if we just write that particular specific line, throw that exception, so the same thing that we have seen, that when we program crash and then it comes to that particular specific show that particular specific line where the catch is occurring. So if I just go back to my code here, and instead of doing anything, I just come here and say throw, okay, and then we say that which exception you want me. New index out of range exception, and then we can put that one. So when I throw this one at this particular specific line, actually it will throw that exception. It says that that exception is occurring. Actually it is not, but actually we are saying that this exception is occurring. They try to execute that program at the very beginning. The same thing, like an exception has occurred. Okay, so we are saying that index out of bound. So it's giving me the same. Actually, it is not. We are saying that this exception, throw this exception. Okay, so this is also a one way, because you don't want to handle that exceptions by yourself, and then you want to tell the other part of the code to handle that exception. Okay. So what you are doing in your method, you say that I throw this exception, and now you ask the other code to handle that one. So in this way, you are actually we are segregating code. This is specific part of the code that need to handle these kind of related operations. So if we are trying to call that particular specific thing, for example, you are trying to access the information from the student class, okay, and then student informations are not right. You don't want to fix it, because that need to be done by some other department or by some other people or by some other part of the code. So you throw back, okay, this is the exception occurred, now you need to fix it. Okay, so maybe I can say that throw the I need to stop it. We can customize that particular specific message as well. So I say exception, and then I put a message here. What is the message? correct the record, and then I throw that exception within the try block, so we can control X, and then I put that one here, and because it is an exception, it is going to be executed, so it will just try to correct the record. Now I'm giving an appropriate message. Okay, finger cross, work perfectly fine, huh? Yeah, correct the record, correct the student record. This we can have a big very related informations in that particular specific message, so that the other person or other program what they need to do. Okay, so that is the throw. We can generate an exception at our time, and then we ask the other part of the code to handle that one rather than we want to handle it here. You know, this is called the modular approach. This is not my work, so you need to do that in a different part of the code. Okay, throw exceptions, exception handling, the syntax of the user key. I mean, we have a try, then we have multiple catch, then we have a finally. Finally block is optional, that it not necessarily be there. Finally block is used to execute a given set of the statements, whether an exception is thrown or not. I mean, we successfully execute the program or not, that finally is going to be executed. Try, throw, catch, and finally. So we have a try, in which we have a throw, we have a catch, we have finally. So all these together. So let's stop our recording of the lecture here at this point, and then we will start working on the file input and exceptions on the second part. Okay.